What defines an amazing phone? Is it the screen, the camera system, battery life, charging speed? And what if we could redefine these features for a single device that didn't conform to the typical definitions for budget, mid-grade, and flagship devices? This is the Xiaomi 11T, a phone that looks amazing and packs a 65-watt turbocharging 5,000 mAh battery, 120 Hz AMOLED display, and a 108 megapixel camera. This was a device I just had to put to the test.
All right, guys, so this is the Xiaomi 11T, and I'm sure I'm like a lot of you guys out there, I have this tendency of only getting crazy excited when a brand new phone comes out that has these crazy flagship specs and high-end prices, but here I am with a phone that costs about half as much as a lot of those flagship phones and still gives me features that you just don't find on a lot of other phones on there. So my question was, if the Mi 11T could still hold up to my high-end photo and video needs from a phone and then still give me the main areas that matter to me, like screen and battery life. So what's really interesting about this phone is that it really delivers in the areas that matter the most. So while a lot of other phones out there will kind of reserve those must-have features for their top-end devices, this still delivered in the areas that were the most important to me. So for example, this phone actually looks really nice, especially given the price on this. It actually is a really cool looking device. Plus you have 3 different color choices on it. You also have a fingerprint sensor that's built into the power button right here. And on the front of this phone is a 6.67-inch AMOLED display, and this is that first area where this phone really delivers. So the screen is an AMOLED display with 1000 nit brightness, 120 Hz, guys. So this is top end, DCI P3 wide color gamut with HDR10+, and the phone has both a color temperature sensor and an ambient light sensor to help tune things perfectly. It's also covered by the best Gorilla Glass Victus, which is incredibly strong and definitely a screen overall that competes more with super high-end devices. You also have dual speakers with Dolby support, 8 gigs of RAM, and up to 256 gigs of storage. Plus, they actually just committed to giving this at least 3 generations of Android software updates and at least 4 years of security patches. So yeah, the software on this phone, it's just gonna get better. Now, there's actually a ton of features in this phone that just continue to impress me. So for example, the document scanner on this, probably the best I've ever used. And when we talk about the camera, you'll understand why. But also, this thing is just loaded up. You have dual SIMs on this and an IR blaster. So I could basically control all of my televisions straight from my phone. And before we talk about the camera, the second best thing about this phone is going to be the battery and charging. So a 5,000 milliamp hour battery with 67-watt fast charging, turbo fast charging on this. Just to put this in perspective, you can actually charge this from 2% to full in less than 40 minutes. So this is way faster, more than double the speeds that you would get on like an iPhone 13 Pro Max. Plus, this phone actually included that charger in the box. So while a lot of other flagship phones that cost twice as much don't even include anything inside the box, you can actually be charging the Mi 11T at those crazy fast speeds straight out of the box. All right, so now let's talk about the camera, and things get really interesting here. So by default, you actually have a 108 megapixel main camera, and if that sounds pretty crazy, it's because it really is. So this camera will actually render in a 9:1 pixel bin, so your final image is going to be about a 12 megapixel image, including when shooting RAW. However, you can choose to be in the full 108 megapixels, and I'm actually blown away with just how much detail you can get in that mode. So if you want to crop in post, this is absolutely insane what you can get on this one. Now the ultra wide camera is an 8 megapixel camera, and instead of a telephoto camera, this actually uses a macro camera, which is really interesting. I mean, I'd probably use a telephoto camera more than a macro in most areas. However, with 108 megapixels, you can definitely do some cropping in post if you do want to. And where this macro camera really shines for me is for documents. So whether it's taking pictures of those crazy small serial numbers or just document scanning in general, or maybe you do like macro shooting and this thing is going to be absolutely awesome for you. Now, where the real good stuff happens is when you drop this thing into the Pro mode, which comes standard inside the camera app, and it gives you 100% manual control of all 3 cameras, which is pretty rare. You get raw recording, metering modes, focus peaking, and even histograms, which is absolutely awesome. I ended up using this for just about everything, not only because it did have more control over my settings that I like to have, but I also did occasionally see a hiccup with image stacking when shooting directly into the sun. But my raw images always came out looking absolutely amazing. You also have a ton of other camera modes on here, so like night modes, long exposures, panoramics, and just a ton of other more unique options if you want to have some fun with the camera. And the Gallery app just one-up things even more for me, because not only does it give you a massive amount of editing control, including the ability to erase objects, but you can literally do a full sky replacement or dynamic moving sky replacement straight from the app with some of the best results I've ever seen. Now the video camera, very similar setup here. So you do have a 4K sensor on that main camera with amazing quality. Although if you do switch into the ultra wide or into that macro camera, it will drop things down to 1080p. Now where the real magic is when you turn on that Pro mode. So in that Pro mode, you have full manual control over all 3 cameras. And I'm talking features like focus peaking, zebras, and probably the most important to me, which was log mode, because I pretty much used this the entire time because it looked so much better. And with a little bit of grading, I had something that didn't look like it was shot like your average smartphone camera. So where a lot of cell phone video can just look over sharpened and some harsh highlight rolled off, I was actually shooting straight into the sun, which is about the toughest thing for any camera to pull off, and it still had some pretty solid quality. So honestly, the Mi 11T, I mean, it might be making a couple of trade-offs compared to Xiaomi's other flagship phones, but honestly, in the areas that matter the most, you're talking screen, battery, charging, and even the camera features, these are better than a lot of other flagship phones on the market, and it's doing it all out of the box, which is really what I appreciated the most. So the battery, the charging speeds, and even these camera features with log recording and zebras and all this kind of stuff, being able to do that with the built-in apps, being able to get sky replacements from the built-in gallery, these are things you will not find on a lot of other phones on the market. But definitely let me know what you guys are thinking. If you want to see some more phone videos, definitely let me know. I don't do a ton of them, so it's something I want to do a little bit more. Hope you guys appreciate it. Definitely got a ton of new cameras in. Stay tuned, some really cool things to come. Please sub, like if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys soon in a new video.